Mic check, 1, 2. Hey, check 1, 2. Mic check. Check 1, 2. Mic check, 1, 2. Test. Mic check, 1, 2. Testing 1, 2. Mic check. Testing 1, 2. Check 1, 2.
Oh, that one's good.
Well, yeah. Check 1, 2. Testing 1, 2. Check 1, 2. Test 1, 2.
Those casters are pretty loose. They scoot off on you when you don't know it.
Hey, check 1, 2, test. Mic check, testing 1, 2. Mic check, 1, 2, test 1, 2. Microphone check, 1, 2. Hey, mic check, 1, 2, test. Testing 1, 2. Mic check, test 1, 2. Microphone check, 1, 2, test. Testing 1, 2. Hey, mic check 1, 2. Test 1, 2. Microphone check, testing 1, 2. Mic check 1, 2. Hey, check 1, 2, test. Check 1, 2, test 1, 2. Test 1, 2, check. Mic check, test 1, 2, testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2. Check 1, 2. Testing 1, 2. Mic check 1, 2. Test 1, 2. I just need to, I don't know which one's which now. That's all right, though.
Come sit next to me again. Come sit next to me again.
Okay. Thank God I don't have to do any.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, that's where they start there and usually they don't.
There's a psychological principle that dictates we all sit in the same order.
No,
I'm going to have
no,
to sit
no.
by Ralph.
We'll put Ralph here.
Wherever Ralph is, I'm
Ralph there?
we're there. I'm going
Neil
to.
said they
Now,
started
where's,
there.
and there's a place for Greg.
Did you say to him over a short? Would someone say around doing 90 seconds?
I haven't to Ralph.
Could be shorter.
But I'm about to. You said right here, so you can grab the left leg.
Well, yeah. I got my leg of it. It's there.
Hello, Dean.
That's how it looks when it's on
Yep.
screen.
We're all sitting up.
Ralph, it's not Kevin Murphy. Good to see you. Sitting in for Bill. Bill's good? Is he good? Yeah, he's a little banged up. Still a little to him for me.
Yes, please do for me too.
What's that?
Please do for me. Can I use this too?
So Ralph, we're doing 90 seconds.
90 seconds, 2 minutes.
It's Kelly.
Took a look at the video. On the video the other day. It's a good session.
Where did you find it? Was it recorded somewhere?
It's on UFL's YouTube page. I can send you the link.
Would you do that? May I write my email on here? I'll give you a card.
So I'm going to take my cue from you, what you say, and then I'm going to say you did.
Could be as short as possible.
See that? These microphones, you do not have to push the button. They're already live. So just pull them up to you.
Very good.
A lot going on, Brian. You know, the weekend's coming, but that just means today's Thursday before Friday, Friday before Saturday. So it's a lot.
It is. Yeah, I'm trying to think. When we were last one, I can't remember who it was. It was this girl back in February. And it was almost full.
Did you come down?
But if anybody,
I didn't make it down. I streamed it and I couldn't tell. You can see the people.
I would already have heard what I was. And most of them are coming to hear him anyway.
And
I still think there's so many other distractions right now.
making it an
People
extra
so
now. But I think it'd be something very short. We'll see what he goes. Because he's going to talk about colors. Can I tell you, when I was about 6 years old, I mean, people had always said that I was white.
Yeah, I was have to give speeches
I
out.
was
Standing
in
at the
church.
podium because I'm the same way.
They asked me to say this long welcome. It was a church anniversary. The church was packed. And so I had this thing about they had the hinge on the floor or something, you know, the welcome and the hinges and the fountain. Anyway, I couldn't get it straight. And so I started crying. because I couldn't remember the doors or whether it was the hinges or the foundation of it, so it was just. And so someone said, you must
Have I ever told you about, this is a similar story, about my pipe organ experience? I love pipe organs, and I have for as long as I can remember. And when I was in high school, I got to work with a pipe organ builder. Learned a lot about the mechanics. And I really thought, because I played the piano for a long time, and I played on pipe organs while I was working. So when I got to college, I got a job as an organ tech in the orchestra. And I worked for him for 2 years, and he said one day while we were kind of between things, he said, you know, you never played for me. Seriously, he said, so grab a piece of music, because he knew I was some church, and play for me. And I did. And he said, in the nicest. With all that you know about organs, it's a shame you have no talent.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. Why don't we go ahead and get started? I'm making sure all these mics are working. It looks like they are. Appreciate so much taking time out of the middle of your busy day to come and hear this continuing series of open forums about the future of the University of Louisville. So, you know, I think it's fair to say that September was a bad month all the way around. We had lots and lots of sad news to digest about hurricanes and earthquakes and then a shooting in Las Vegas. And of course, those things put into perspective problems we have here on our own campus, which I think is important for all of us to sit back and reflect on things in context. But you know, we certainly have had our series of challenges here on a local level as well. And in talking the end of last week to our staff in the Office of Communications and Marketing, they raised the question, you know, should we go forward with these open forums, the one we had Tuesday and then the one here today. And you know, my answer you know, is basically this slide. You know, of course, we have to go forward. We are U of L. We are a resilient place. We are focused on the future. And while we, in fact, have to, you know, deal appropriately with the difficult events of today, we have to stay heavily focused on what happens tomorrow. And so I think that what you'll hear today, the format will be in some ways similar and in some ways different from what we did back in July. First, I promised you that this would be a series of forums and not just one event, and so we're holding true to that promise, and you'll see this is an ongoing series that we'll be conducting on a regular basis. It's a listening tour. It's a way for us to find out, you know, what the staff and the faculty are thinking and how they can help shape our planning. So what we did last time is we mentioned that there's a transition taking place. We are continuing, as we must, to deal with resolving problems that exist today. Some of them pre-existing problems that we're still cleaning up, some of them more recently identified problems, but nevertheless, problems related to the past. At the same time, we're asking our faculty and our staff to find the strength to work with us to really start thinking about what we want this university to be. Because, you know, only there can we place our energy and change things. We do not want to become mired down in problem solving to the point where we can't think about the future, because if we do that, we'll never move forward. So I will make a few comments at the beginning of this, and then I'll introduce our panel and sort of talk about the format for the bulk of today's event. I wanted to give you a quick update on SACS. Some of you have heard this. For those of you who have, I apologize for the redundancy, but I do want to make sure that as many people as possible know where we are with our process of resolving the probation with the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, Commission on Colleges. We're gearing up for the big annual meeting in December, which is in Dallas, and that's where the SACS committee will vote on the status of U of L's accreditation. So you'll recall that it was at their annual meeting last year in December of 2016 when the university was placed on probation for 4 items that were triggered by the governor's decision to replace the previous Board of Trustees and their belief that he did so in a way that did not conform with existing state law at the time. The Attorney General of Kentucky agreed that that was the case, as did the Circuit Court, and this set off a series of dominoes which fell and led to SACS placing the university's accreditation on probation. And it was around 4 standards, all related topics: the placement of members on boards, the dismissal of members from boards, external influence on the board by the state, and how the CEO or the president of the university is selected, evaluated, and if necessary, replaced. So those were the standards that SACS focused in on. In the months to follow, through the spring and summer of this year, SACS added 5 additional areas where they wanted the university to provide information to be sure that we were in compliance with other standards on top of the ones that led to the probation. So this made a total of 9 issues that they chose to evaluate the university for compliance. And when they do these processes, they always add another one, which is just integrity of the operation, and so that makes 10. So we had a site visit that took place the 19th through the 21st of last month, September, and there were 6 individuals who came. They were all administrators and or former administrators or trustees from other institutions that are accredited by SACS. So these are basically peers who agree to do this on behalf of SACS and go out on a fact-finding mission. So they were here for 3 days, and they went through documents, they reviewed our reports, they interviewed lots of people about the various issues contained within these standards. And we received last week a draft report back from SACS. I'm pleased to report that we did very well. To go through it quickly, the one that was nicest to see was the first one, and that was institutional integrity. They found it to be present, and that was not an issue for them. So that was very nice to come out of the gate and have them make that statement at the beginning of their report. Then as they started to go through and look at the individual 9 topics, the 4 that had led to the probation were all cleared in their draft report. So those core issues they felt had been resolved. They interviewed the governor himself, they interviewed members of the General Assembly, they reviewed the law that was passed by the Senate and the House back in the spring of 2017, and they felt that this addressed their concerns as they related to those 4 standards. With regard to the other 5, they cleared us on 3 of them, including the one on board conflict of interest, and most importantly, the 2 related to finance. There was one on financial stability of the university, and there was one on control of finances. They cleared us on all of those. There were 2 standards where they gave us some residual housekeeping items to take care of. One of them is very simple. They felt there should be a memorandum of understanding in place between the university and our real estate foundation. We had not realized that they would be interested in that, but they were. So that is being written this week and will be passed on to our Board of Trustees for their approval at the October 18th meeting. So that's really a very simple housekeeping item, and that'll take care of number 8. And then the last one has to do with a standard that requires that all administrators at universities must be qualified. Well, when we were asked to comment on that, we provided resumes and background and information about people who were in all of our administrative positions across the university, because that's the typical way one would respond to a question about that standard. And when they were here, they made it clear that they were concerned really about the number of interim positions we had, which was a bit of a surprise to us because the standard as written by SACS doesn't use that word or make any reference to interim administrators. All it talks about is that the people in their positions must be qualified. So nevertheless, we have a vigorous response that we're preparing to that. For starters, we have a lot of search committees doing their work, some of which are pretty far down the path, and there will be a number of positions filled between now and the end of the year. So that will decrease the number of individuals who are in interim capacity. For those people who will still be interims at the end of the year, we'll provide more background to them about the backgrounds of these folks, their CVs, their accomplishments while in the interim capacity, and then also a real strong statement from our Board of Trustees about their having placed full responsibility in our hands and the ability to act fully to conduct the affairs of the university despite the interim title. So we feel that this response will completely satisfy the language of the standard and be responsive to the questions they asked. I can't tell you how they're going to view that, but if you read the standard and see how we're responding, they're certainly consistent with one another. We will be at the meeting in December when this is voted on. Hopefully there won't be much to discuss. If there is, I'll have an opportunity to go before the 77 individuals who vote on this and make our case if there are some residual concerns. So I think that overall the report was one that showed a great deal of progress towards satisfying all of the issues with a couple of housekeeping items for us still to attend to. The other thing I wanted to say a few words about today is athletics. And I think most of you are very familiar with this topic from having read the paper and seen the television in the last week and a half. It's been a difficult week for the university. We were completely taken off guard by information that was presented to us by the U.S. Attorney's Office last Tuesday morning. And since that time, have done a couple of things. Obviously, we took a quick step to place a couple of key administrators on administrative leave. And we also have been spending a lot of time working with the U.S. Attorney's Office to understand information as it's forthcoming and be responsive to requests for information that we have received. And so there's a very interactive, cooperative process underway. The other thing that we had to do, obviously, was act quickly to place competent individuals in acting capacities. First for our men's basketball team because their season started Sunday, their practice season, and then also our acting athletics director, and Vince Tyree was named, of course, for that role. So those individuals have been meeting with their team members and with the other coaches and with the entire staff of the athletics department. There was a meeting yesterday with the entire staff of athletics, and they are taking a deep breath for the time being, and they feel very comfortable with Vince Tyree in this acting role. And there was a very good meeting yesterday where I think, at least for the time being, this has brought some stability to that group as we sort through the issues and try to understand all there is to this story. Just know that we are acting conservatively yet appropriately as we understand information, and our primary goal is to protect the university. We've got a lot to protect. We've got a great athletics program. We have a lot of fans who deserve to have great programming, and our intent is to do everything we can to protect that program, and then of course try to do what we can to repair some of the reputational damage that has occurred as a result of this. That's going to take quite a bit of time. So that said, what I really would like to do is shift gears, and I don't mean to cut that topic off. I know that those of you who have questions and concerns are always free to come to me and ask those questions. A lot of people do, so don't hesitate to continue that. We want to make sure that we answer your questions fully. The idea behind these forums, though, really had been not simply for us to be up here passing information on to you, but to have an opportunity to hear what all of you have to say about some of the ways we should start thinking about prioritizing what it is that the university is going to incorporate into its future programming and how we're going to invest. As we think about resources, which are always finite, we have to make sure that we invest in the things that are most closely aligned with our mission, things that line up with our talent base, and then from that construct a list where we will double down and invest aggressively in those things that we all agree should be promoted. So this is really our chance to listen to you. It's just a start. We're really going to be just scratching the surface today. There's not enough time in any of these sessions to get all the input we need, but we're going to be providing lots of different kinds of forums, meetings like this, smaller groups, online, polls, other ways that we can try to get a sense from as broad a group as we can across both campuses about what it is that the staff and the faculty wish to see at U of L. So at the last set of forums, it was suggested that what we do is for these is to have a panel, and so we've done that, and you see the panel to my left with 5 individuals representing the pillars of the 2020 plan. And our Office of Communications and Marketing was clever enough to help me construct this nice diagram that really tries to show that these pillars that make up the 2020 plan all rest on a foundation of people. And so I think it's important for us to keep in mind that none of these things will work if we don't have an enthusiastic and qualified workforce. And so, central in our thinking about how we find new resources and how we apply those resources we have to make sure that we find ways to support our faculty and our staff so that they're able to help us build success in each of these 5 pillars. Morale has had its problems at U of L for understandable reasons in the last couple of years. We haven't had raises. We've seen colleagues leave through attrition who have not all been replaced. People are doing double duty in certain areas, and that is just no foundation on which to build things that are going to be strong and lasting. So I say that, and I show this diagram to focus on the fact that whatever we do, the central theme in all of this has to be finding the resources to invest in people so that we can have success in those areas that we choose to pursue. And you'll hear this as a recurring theme as we seek new resources and as we decide how to apply those resources we have. This is intended to be a dialogue, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to ask each of our 5 panelists to make a few introductory comments about the pillar of the 2020 plan that they're here today to represent, and then open the floor to comments of any kind around those topics. We'll cycle through the 5, see where we are time-wise, and go from there. So we'll start with education, and our interim provost, Dale Billingsley, is here and will lead us off in that conversation.
Thanks, Dr. Postel. I'm Dale Billingsley. In real life, I'm an English professor, but for the last 15 months, I've been the acting provost. And so my responsibilities in that role are to work with the deans and with the faculties on the development and support of academic programs, education toward degrees for our students. Our work is focused on the preservation, transmission, application, and discovery of human knowledge, and that work extends to all of our campuses and all of our students. Very often, because I've lived on the Belknap campus for 40 years, I think mostly about undergraduate students, and for a long time my work was with undergraduates. But since I've been in this role, and indeed in the long time that I've been in the provost's office, it's been more and more important to me to see how our 2 campuses might work together. So I'm particularly happy about things like the new Bachelor of Science in Neuroscience that's going to the Board of Trustees for approval in the next month. This is an important binding between the College of Arts and Sciences, which is our largest undergraduate unit, and the School of Medicine, and I look forward to the development of that program going forward. I need to know, and would like to know from you, as I know my colleague Bill Pierce and his deputy and associate Kevin Martin, who's here today, what more we can do to assist faculties and units at both campuses to assist them in the work that they do toward educating our students. And I'll be glad to hear from you on that point. Who's next? Kevin, I think you're next.
Go next.
Sure. So we're doing education perfectly. Good. I'm glad to hear that. That's delightful news.
I'll bring up
Diane? Oh, here she comes. Okay.
Offerings in the biology department that perhaps we could look a little bit more with the eye toward an anatomy course with perhaps a cadaver lab at the undergraduate level, which would be great preparation. I know that's expensive, and it would just be helpful to have that kind of preparation for medical and dental students.
Okay. Have you or are you aware of any ongoing discussion between the units here and the undergraduate program in biology, chemistry, or physics? That we don't usually have those things? Well, okay then. I'm not in the business of delivering cadavers usually, but we'll see if we can promote that kind of discussion because it is important.
on your topic of dramatically increasing the number of students. I'm going to go to a continuing theme that I've brought up many times. I really think we need to aggressively look into online students in at least the hundreds of thousands of additional students, if not millions, over the next 10 years. I really just think that is where education is going, and we're going to be competing with that market.
Yes, thank you. And you know that we are aware of those things, and the Delphi Center and many of the undergraduate programs and actually graduate programs are where we've seen the biggest growth in our programmatic development for whole degree programs in distance education, but that is an important field that we will be working on.
So I'm in the School of Public Health, and we have an undergraduate program as well, and you mentioned the new program that may be coming online with neuroscience. So I have a question kind of related to the previous one about the lab. You know, we've been contemplating some laboratory courses, but an impediment seems to be the availability of laboratory space for courses that would be offered from departments at the Health Sciences Center to be held on the undergraduate campus. So could you comment about a process whereby we might pursue obtaining some space where that could be done?
Well, we have to build more buildings because the space on Belknap campus right now is almost entirely used. That doesn't mean that when the new building opens, there's a new academic building being built this year. It will have, I think it has a total of almost 30 classrooms and labs in it. When we consolidate the space that's opened up in other buildings, we may see that there's room for more labs and more not only interdisciplinary, but intercampus programs. Lee Smith, who's the Chief Operations Officer, is working on an inventory of space on the Belknap campus right now. There's a long list of people who want more room, but certainly I'll be glad to put that on the list as well. If you could give me, and if the other units could provide, Diane, you too, what you see your needs are, and if we could also think perhaps about scheduling. I know that your space is occupied on this campus too, but if we could think about scheduling students in your units so that they are not bound to the Belknap campus in their lower division courses, but sometimes free to come here, that would be a way also that we could, since your facilities are already in place, although tightly used, that would be a way that we could go forward with that.
It's my understanding that journal subscriptions are being cut at this library, And is that correct?
No, it was, but it's not anymore. We have rearranged the budget partly in the university libraries to adjust some of the lines that were left vacant and had been approved for rehires, but we've moved some of those around, and the Elsevier package, which was the one I think most people were concerned about, is going to be ordered as it was before. So that's about 4,000 titles altogether. It's $2.2 million over the course of the calendar year, but that package will be retained. There will be some cuts, but they will be based primarily, as I understand Dean Fox to say, they'll be based primarily on usage. It's difficult to get usage figures for all of the journals in the Elsevier package, but for some of the other single item subscriptions that we have, we can track them.
Because you are aware that students and faculty and staff really need those journals.
Yes, if I wasn't aware of it before last month, I certainly am aware of it now. Yeah, Mary Jo.
I'm so curious, number one is the dramatically larger student body. And I'm just, if you could give a few thoughts on what our undergraduate admissions office in particularly is doing about recruiting those undergraduate students. I have some thoughts about that. I don't know that I necessarily want to hear, but I'm just curious what their overall mission is as far as the recruitment of the undergraduate student body.
Okay, I'm going to pick out the parts of your question that I want to answer, and then if you want me to answer some of the rest of them, you'll have to go back to them. We hired a new vice provost for strategic enrollment management last year. He came on board the 1st of October. His name is Jim Begani. Jim brought with him a degree of technical expertise in enrollment management that we haven't had in that office in a long time. What he has done is to look primarily at the recruitment of traditional age first-year students, as we've often done in the past, and as the focus of the undergraduate admission office has been for a long time. What he has come up with, and what is the common practice in undergraduate admissions elsewhere, is to extend the range of our recruiting for students so that we now have 3 regional recruiters in Chicago, Nashville, and somewhere else that I can't, Cincinnati, who are working very diligently to the point that the last time I heard the figures, the undergraduate applications at this present time are twice the number of applications at the same time, date for date, as they were last year. So, and many of those are coming from outside our region. The number that he predicts, the number of students that he predicts for our growth next year from that kind of engagement is 400. The number that is on campus, has been out on campus for the size of the university soon, is 30,000. I try to remind people that that's a kind of biblical number, like out of the book of Exodus and the latter parts of the Pentateuch, because it's like 40 years in the desert. It's a bigger number than we presently are. It came up originally because 30,000 seems to be the typical number for universities of our size who have research missions. That 30,000, though, has a number at the other end that we also have to attend to, and that's the number of degrees that we produce and our graduation rate. If you look at our sister schools in the ACC, the next lowest graduation rate is Florida State's, and they are 20 percentage points higher than we are. So just bringing in 30,000 students every year is not much good if most of them don't stay around to graduate. So that's one of the things we're working on. To be brief about the rest, we're also trying to reach out to non-traditional populations in the undergraduate area. Adult students, transfer students, students who have begun degrees. We're told, the state and 55,000 Degrees tells us that there are between 90 and 100,000 people in the Louisville metro area who have hours toward a college degree but no degree. It's a very rich pool of students that we might draw on. So you've already suggested our distance education programs could grow further as well. We're also looking for, and have already seen this year, considerable growth. I think in some programs it's as high as 8% growth in graduate programs. The professional schools, especially nursing and dentistry, are bound by physical constraints in a way that some of the undergraduate programs are not. But we're headed in that direction. If that gives you an idea of the range of recruiting that we're looking at, not just in the undergraduate level, but in the graduate programs and professional schools as well. Uh-oh, here's Irving.
I know.
Yeah.
How you doing, Dale? I know you didn't want to see me come up. And I could speak to this about all of the areas, but I'm going to talk about education since it's here. One of the issues that I think many departments have, especially here, but I think throughout the university, is that those are very lofty ideals and goals. But we're experiencing right now a significant reduction in finances, actually drastic reductions last year. We're losing faculty members through attrition and going other directions. And you're talking about increasing the number of students that we would teach, but we need teachers to do that, and we need resources to do that. And so while you're doing, even with distance learning, it requires a significant increase in faculty. And we also have to have, if we're going to do this, somewhere where we're going to get space. It's nice to talk about, yeah, well, we need to get space, but especially down on the Health Sciences Center, we don't have a lot of extra space. And so if we're going to do those things, make those dramatic increases in undergraduate and graduate programs, we need resources. And we're experiencing now a significant reduction in resources, and the prospects that those are going to even reduce even more. And so it's kind of hard for us to get enthused about these goals when we're looking at, yes, we'd like to do those, but we don't see any resources, and we don't see any plan for where those resources are going to be coming from.
Well, I realize there wasn't a question in any of that, but I do need to remind you that the purpose of these forums, at least in part, is to help us identify, in the world that Irving just described, there's no new resources coming in. Given the resources that we have, are our priorities for the expenditure of those resources appropriate? And if we do have other goals, and if we have things that we know we need to do, then how are we going to rechannel the resources so that they are allocated appropriately for the priorities that the university actually has? So the question, I guess, comes back on you is, what of the things that we presently do we need to stop doing so that we can direct those resources properly for the things we need to do best? And I would really like for somebody else to talk now.
Well, Dale, if I might amplify what you said, there's another piece to that answer. So if we decide as a university that growing the size of the student population is desirable, whether it's on campus or online or both, obviously we can't do that with the same number of people and the same number of classrooms and the same number of staff. It doesn't work. So what you have to do, if that's a goal, is put together a business plan around what the growth looks like. Okay, so more students obviously means more tuition, but it also means more expense. And understanding the appropriate number of people needed to teach the classes, support the faculty with staff, and have classroom space if it's on campus, or IT support if it's online, or whatever is necessary to make it work. So it's a business plan. I don't think anyone should come away from here thinking that the goal is to go from 22,000 students to 30,000 students with the same number of people in the same buildings, because that wouldn't work. That's not the idea. There would have to be an increase in resources, and this is why we're having this listening tour, because first of all, there has to be a desire to do that, to have that exercise, to create the business plan, to understand what all we'd have to do to make it work. So I agree completely with what you're saying, Irv, and our job is to figure out how the resources can be made appropriate to fit the task.
Kevin, why don't you go ahead?
There you go.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm very clearly not Bill Pierce. He's a little bit better looking than I am. I'm Kevin Merton. I'm an Associate Vice President for Research. I'll be pinch hitting for Bill today. He sends his regards. Thank you, Dr. Postal, for the opportunity to facilitate this discussion. Very briefly, just some background. I started with U of L in the very early 2000s as a graduate student. And at that point, the university was really just beginning to hit its stride in the research arena. We started to hit our groove at that point. As you guys are all aware, research funding, research activity significantly increased between 1997 and about 2007 and 2008. And I really had a front row seat as a graduate student to see that increase in activity. We were recruiting new faculty. We were developing new programming. We were planning new buildings, putting shovels in the ground, and actually putting new facilities online. And the success of our faculty, many of you in the room today, really took us from a non-player in the research world to a top-tier research institution, where we stand today as an R1 doctoral university with highest research activity. Now, since that 2008 time period, we've slowed some. Our growth has slowed. There have been some years that have been better than others, some years that have been worse than others. We've largely plateaued over the last several years. Last year was actually a banner year for us, so things look good within the last year. But over the course of the last 10 years, we've largely plateaued. So while we remain in that top tier of research institutions across the nation, as Bill Pierce put it on Tuesday, we're really one of the lower rungs on that top ladder. And that means that if we want to maintain our status as a research institution, there's not a lot of room for error. There's not a lot of room for slippage. It's a very challenging time, obviously, at the university. I don't particularly like to talk about maintaining status. I'd prefer to talk about increasing our status and moving up the ladder. But obviously, as Dr. Joshua pointed out, for the academic side, that will require additional resources. It'll also require a plan and a vision for what the research enterprise at the university is going to look like in 2, 5, 10 years. So I'm excited to be here this afternoon and begin to facilitate that conversation of what the research enterprise should look like in the future. Bill kind of laid out 3 things that he'd hoped we could accomplish in his absence. He wanted to briefly talk about the 4 items that Dr. Postal's included as proposed priorities on the screen behind me, and to get your feedback on, are these the right priorities? If they are, what is it going to take to accomplish these things? And then thirdly, what additional ideas do you guys have? What things aren't on this list that should be, that are going to, at a minimum, help us maintain our status on that ladder, but preferably in 5, 10 years, begin to move up that ladder again like we did in the 1997 to 2008 time period. So I'll stop there and field any questions or comments that you have. I guess I'll kind of kick it off with a question of, as far as infrastructure is concerned, what do you guys see as the needs moving forward for infrastructure to support research, scholarship, and creative activities?
I think I speak for most of the researchers in this room. One of the things that we need, and this is not a new message, it's one we've been saying over and over again, as far as infrastructure go, I think the grants management, I know they work extremely hard at what they do, and I know that they are probably overwhelmed, but we have a real problem with, we can get grants submitted, it's getting them processed, it's getting them maintained and in a timely fashion. And I'm assuming that's what you're talking about when you talk about grants infrastructure. So I think as far as researchers go, one of the things that my faculty tell me all the time, that's the number one thing. A stronger, better, more efficiently run grants management. I've talked to the people over there. They're all for it. I think that they have an overwhelming task, especially now with all the auditing and compliance that has to go on. But as PIs sit in their labs and try to put together our own applications, the number of obstacles that one has to get through to see that through and then to maintain it is, administratively, it's a real challenge. So I know it's on the list. I think that's great. I think the other thing that we really need is I would like to know what your plan is to engage the research leadership or even the PIs here on this campus to have a say in what the changes are going to be in the infrastructure. Do you have a plan for that?
Well, with Dr. McLean standing up, I think it's a good opportunity for him to talk about some of the things that he was going to put into place. Craig, you have talked in the past several months about putting a group together to discuss research vision on the HSC campus going forward.
Yeah, so I think it's incredibly important that investigators try and chart their own destiny. And so Dr. Postal and I and Bill Pierce have talked about this, John Klein, and so we're getting a group of investigators together on the health sciences campus in November to try and come up with important things that we need to do in the future and chart our own destiny. So I think that's critical. But I also was going to agree with you 100% that so this is a big problem. We've actually been very, very successful in the past couple of years, as Kevin's mentioned. We've gotten more grants. We've gotten more of these big grants, the P-type grants, U-type grants, but they're more and more difficult to manage. And our university infrastructure sometimes just doesn't get it. And moreover, hiring process, for example, we say it's going to get fixed, but these grants, once you get money in, you need to be able to hire people. So they have a hiring freeze, and we're trying to hire people. The administrative people get this mixed up. So we can't continue to make these mistakes. And then the last thing is we're going to have to bring in new investigators. So recruitment is going to be critical if we're successful. So anything that's happening productive now in research actually started 3 or 4 years ago. That's the way the grant funding cycles work. And if you look at our funding, and Kevin's actually broken this out, we're even worse than the NIH. And Francis Collins is very concerned about this. Your best funded investigators are unfortunately my age, and I'm over 70. So these guys are going to retire or something's going to happen to them, and you need people in the pipeline. We don't have that. So are we going to have resources to recruit?
So just to reinforce Dr. McLean's comment, I agree wholeheartedly with the need to recruit new faculty. The analysis that Craig referred to is we did an analysis of the age of our principal investigators that received all awards last year. And our curve was way towards the higher end of the age bracket. So we will, in the coming years, need to replace some of our investigators. There's also a need to assist our junior faculty in becoming, pursuing grants and pursuing sponsored programs.
Could I ask if there's a way that we used to have a number of different grow your own programs. Is that a way that we could remedy this or address some of the needs, or do we need to go outside for, I know that high-end researchers generally have to be seasoned, and if you're talking about newly minted PhDs, they're not very well seasoned, but is that a program we should be thinking of also?
So I think you're going to have to recruit in the targeted areas. So as an institution, we're going to have to decide what are the most important areas for us to grow in and really focus on recruiting young investigators, hopefully with money into those areas. And we have to grow our own. That's the second thing. And this all takes money. So it's a expensive thing. And you have NCI designation up there. You have to decide what are your programs that are successful, and you need to invest in them. So I think that's something you need to take a look at.
And one other item, so Dr. McLean mentioned the hiring process. I've recently been doing some work with a number of administrators on the Belknap campus, in particular with John Elliott in HR. We're going to be rolling out some new hiring practices for sponsored programs. Our target deadline right now is October 18th, so a few weeks away. We've done some back-of-the-napkin calculations. I understand that it has been taking a couple of months, 2 to 3 months at times, to get all the way through the hiring process for sponsored programs. We expect that the things that the new processes that we plan to put in place should drop that substantially. So look for that to come out here fairly soon. And then I guess a question for Dr. Postal is, Craig mentioned the need to prioritize. I believe this is what you're referring to as far as, building a valid business plan, identifying what priorities we really want to pursue, and then, identifying the financial means to pursue those.
That's right. So, the business plan is necessary for everything, whether it's a growth in the educational enterprise or a growth in the research enterprise. And we're not assuming, at least from the perspective of my office, that the resources are as they are today. We have to grow the resources. And there's a variety of ways we're going to do that, and that'll be a topic for future forums. But, for instance, we've put in a request to the state, along with the University of Kentucky, to have more Bucks for Brains investment. Now, in the current environment in Frankfurt, with all the concern about pension obligations and so forth, this is a tough argument. But there are people in the General Assembly who understand the importance of this. And I was fortunate enough last week to have been invited to go to Frankfurt to speak to the subcommittee on budget and planning. And we talked about Bucks for Brains. And they were very interested. They wanted to know a lot about it. They wanted to know the number of Bucks for Brains chairs we had, what kinds of projects over the years they had resulted in, and what kinds of areas we would target for research should additional Bucks for Brains chairs become available. And Craig's point is really valid. A lot of our researchers are very senior people. And if we don't keep filling the pipeline, and bringing in new people and new ideas and new programs, we're going to be in trouble. And this nice year that we've experienced, could be the beginning of a subsequent decline. So we can't afford to see that. But yes, Kevin, to answer your question, there has to be a business plan for all of these things.
Okay, I'm Maureen Taylor Archer, Vice Provost for Diversity and International Affairs, and I represent the pillar of diversity, opportunity, and social justice. I'm going to take my time to talk a little bit about our diversity plan that was approved by the Council on Post-Secondary Education and most recently by our Board of Trustees on September 15th. The reason why this plan is so important is because by state statute we cannot develop new programs unless we're showing sufficient progress in meeting our diversity goals. The diversity goals and the plan is really three-pronged in terms of three. It's opportunity, success, and impact. Opportunity include the enrollment of diverse students. That's not only at the undergraduate level, but it's also at the graduate and the professional schools. So the enrollment, the success of those students, as well as impact. And with impact, we're talking about workforce diversity, as well as the campus climate and of having a culture of competency, you know, for all faculty, staff, and students. So I want to just let you know that this is an important part of what we're doing and what we're focused on. Each unit, meaning vice president and dean, should have, or we're asking them to have, or they're required to have, a diversity plan. And those metrics will help undergird and help us meet the overall diversity plan. I'm really pleased to know that my colleague, Dr. Faye Jones, has doing an excellent job in terms of leadership on diversity efforts, or with diversity efforts on the health sciences campus. But we're one university, and so all of this must come together in order for us to meet the goals of the university diversity plan. So with that, are there questions or comments? Okay.
Mardine, I might say one thing. Yesterday, we finished up our site visit for the law school. They had their every 7-year accreditation visit, and so they had a team of site visitors in, and we had our exit interviews yesterday morning, and there was a long discussion about diversity in the law school and across campus in general. And, you know, they pointed out, you know, there's an interesting disparity that we have to figure out and then fix. So, you know, we brag about diversity in our incoming students, and because the statistics are pretty good. I mean, if you look at the students who have joined the University of Louisville in this last year, we have 15.5% African Americans, we have 5.6% Hispanic Latino, and then if you go beyond diversity and look at things like first generation students, it's almost 20%. So, you know, they're pretty impressive statistics if you look at our entering class. Those same levels of success are not evident among faculty and among administrative positions at the University of Louisville. And so there's a disconnect there. And so that's something we're giving thought to. You know, why are we right now more successful with student recruitment in this area than we are faculty and administrators? And we'll figure it out. But it was an interesting conversation, and they applauded the student success, and they challenged us on the faculty side.
One of the things that I think is important to note is that the success of the students and the retention of our faculty is really key in our diversity plan and achieving those metrics. So the campus climate, if we have workplace environments that are not conducive, if we have other things that we've had happen, at least on the Belknap campus, we have to pay attention to building inclusive excellence in all that we do, and having a campus climate that really values everyone. And so one of the things that we're doing, or we're planning to do, and I will work in conjunction with Dr. Jones on this campus, is just having campus conversations. There are a number of divisive issues that have happened, and we certainly don't want what happened in Charlottesville, whether it's around a statue or whether it's around someone kneeling or someone. We really want to have a dialogue so that there can be mutual understanding around some of these issues. We may never agree on them totally, but there are a number of things that we need to at least come together as a university to have those conversations. And so the disparity between enrollment, but we also, it also becomes apparent that we're not graduating the number of students that come in. So the retention and the success of our students really very important. So we need all of you, as President Postal pointed out, that all of these pillars rest on people, the faculty, the staff, the students. So, you know, we can't do it. It's certainly not, can't happen with just Dr. Jones leading it or with mine leading it on Belknap. It's really a collective effort and a collective responsibility on the part of all of us. So, Dr. Fitzpatrick.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor Archer. Good afternoon. I'm Ralph Fitzpatrick, and I serve today as the Interim Vice President for Community Engagement. I'd like to thank Dr. Postal for his kind invitation today to come and be a part of this conversation. I'm one of those individuals who get the rare opportunity almost on a daily basis to spend time out in our community engaging, if you will, with various stakeholders. And that's all the way from residents in our community to government and civic leaders to business leaders and the like. And I'm proud to report here today that in most of those conversations, if not all, there is a high regard for the work that our institution is engaging in the way of engagement. And for that, I wish to say thank you, colleagues, here today. There are many of you that I look out into the audience that have really made the difference in our university in the regard that our community and our state holds for our university in regards to this work. I have to look over and acknowledge the work of Dr. Kelly Dunn in the office in the School of Medicine. Kelly's work is statewide. It's not just local with our AHEC program serving many underserved individuals. Dr. Faye Jones has already been mentioned by Dr. Taylor Archer, another individual that works tirelessly, with the community in terms of engaging with our Passports Board and a number of others. Craig Blakely up there from the College of Public Health and Information Sciences is another individual that we count on in terms of the work going forward. Dr. Craig McLean, I look at this guy and he talks about his age and the work that he's engaged in, but he's still pumping out $20 million grant applications that recently went out just a couple days ago. I dare say there are others. Urban Joshua, who's been an individual that's been on the wall, if you will, or in the vineyard for a long, long time. Community engagement is essential. It's embedded within the grand mission of our university, and it's not something that just popped up recently, folks. It's been there for quite some time now, but clearly remains as one of those pillars in the community. We are committed. We are an engaged institution. And one of the things that I would be interested in hearing from you are your thoughts on having been regarded in the past several years as a national leader in community engagement. I would be interested in knowing what you think is necessary to propel us to the next level of being regarded and acknowledged as a national model. I think that's where we need to go now. There's not a week that goes by, and members of our team that's here can attest to this, that we don't get an inquiry from some institution of higher learning across the country. We've entertained site visits from the University of Notre Dame. We've entertained site visits from University of West Florida who wants to know, how do you guys get it done? How do you do it? What's the secret in it? And the beauty of it is, again, that I think it's embedded within the mission and that you have the passion to get this done. So again, I would welcome any comments that you would have. Look forward to working with you in the days ahead to keep it going and to propel us to that next level going forward. Questions? Comments? My friend Irv.
You should sit down closer to the microphone, Irving.
I wanted to say that I think everyone knows that really the Health Sciences Center has really been instrumental in our community engagement and keeping that in the forefront. One of the issues that we have, I'm a department chair, and I think other chairs and other administrators, we have individuals that are involved in this, but as far as them getting the same type of credit academically for their performance as far as community engagement, we still haven't quite got there yet, and I think we're working on that. I know I've talked with Dr. Kelly Dunn about that we really want community engagement to be considered a scholarly activity that's right up there with education and research, and it's kind of intertwined in that. And so that's the thing too, we want to kind of keep that, this is just a comment, I think we have an opportunity because we are a institution that really is bound to the community, that I think we have opportunities to make strides in both in education and research scholarship by putting more emphasis on community engagement, but also working out ways that we can tangibly reward individuals that are putting a lot of effort in that area.
Thank you, Irvin. Irvin makes a point that we continue to address. I'm glad that that comment was made today in the presence of my provost and my president. We've had faculty liaisons from each of our academic units that brought this concern to our attention. So how best do we go about the business of incentivizing, if you will, our faculty for the good work that they're doing? Irvin, we'll continue to work on that. There are models that are out there that we know that we can take a look at, a critical look at going forward, and I know that this is something that will be on the radar going forward. And we'll continue to press that issue. Thank you, sir. Other comments and our questions?
I have a request, and that is that we think, as Diane Foster asked about provision of labs for lower division students preparing to come to get degrees on this campus, if we could think about ways that we could engage undergraduate students in some of the many engagement projects that go on here in the signature partnerships area. I'm thinking specifically about things that are done by units at Health Sciences. If we could engage our undergraduate students who often look for places to shadow physicians or dentists, to assist in ways that they can without an appropriate credential, assist in the work that nurses do. That kind of work is work that would be very valuable for our students. It would also allow them to fulfill some of the obligations of their culminating undergraduate experience. It's part of the QEP that started 10 years ago. So if we could think about ways to cut across some of not just our silos or our unit boundaries, but even our campus boundaries, and move students out into the community more actively at the undergraduate level, I think that would be a great benefit to the community and also to the educational process.
Great point. Thank you, Dale. Ryan?
Thank you, Dr. Fitzpatrick. I'm Brian Robinson. I am the Interim Vice President for University Advancement. I want to talk, we're up against the clock, so I'll talk briefly this afternoon about stewardship. This obviously were the original pillars of the 2020 plan. Stewardship is a concept, something that we know has been in the works and the planning, strategic planning for this university for some time. I think it's important, stewardship is sort of a big umbrella, big tent term. I think it's important to define for VPUA anyhow and for this university what stewardship means. And I'm just going to reduce it to a couple of words: accountability and transparency. I'll explain to you what I mean. We have a $1 billion campaign. We post philanthropy figures every year. There's a big number. What is that philanthropy? Where does that money go? How much of it is cash? How do we understand what the priorities are? I see division leaders and department chairs and deans and all types of academic leaders in this audience. What are your priorities? What are our programmatic priorities? How can we align those with donor interest? This is the long-term vision for stewardship. Right now, at this very moment, our vision is this: to go to our donors that have given over a period of years and to give them the disclosure and the respect and the courtesy and the transparency with what their investments and their gifts are doing and have done, to articulate those outcomes, to reduce this to an annual report, to provide documentation that shows what their philanthropy has accomplished. As I say often, philanthropy is a very, very powerful thing. People want to know that they're making a difference. I'm sure there are many donors in this audience today. I'm a donor. I have 2 endowments that I contribute to every month out of my paycheck. I want to make sure that my investments and my philanthropic gifts are being put to great use. So the Office of Stewardship has been created. We have a leader. We are assigning 4, possibly 5 full-time, full FTEs for the Office of Stewardship. We also have, as part of that plan, 2 additional positions that we'll be working on endowment compliance. The endowments that exist, how are they being spent? Are they being spent? And working closely with audit. So this is just an approach for stewardship such that if we're not proper stewards, it's hard to continue to ask. It's hard to build a foundation for a campaign for the future, for now and for the future, if we're not proper stewards. So this is a commitment, and I'm thankful, the commitment the VPUA is making, but I'm thankful that we have a president and a provost and a board of trustees and deans and academic leadership that see how critical this effort is. So stewardship is a part of the structure of any university, but we're really certainly seeking more intentionality with this pursuit. And the Office of Stewardship will probably be contacting you or your areas sometime pretty soon as we continue to grow the infrastructure in this regard at the university. So I'm honored to be here today, and I'd be happy to entertain any questions or comments.
I have a comment as far as stewardship. I don't know if this is your area or if I should direct the question to our president. But back in June, he asked all of us to tighten our belts, pinch our pennies, and what have you. However, though, the last Courier Journal recent article shows that the president is overspending in fundraising and recruitment. And what I'd like to know is, are there protocols or safeguards put in place now to prevent that spending from occurring further and overspending? My other comment is has to do with athletics. My question is, we know that Rick Pitino may write a book about what has happened in his life, or somebody else may write a book about what has happened in their life. Is the university going to prevent those people from receiving funds from those books, or will the university get the proceeds from those writings?
Sounds like this is a question for me, Brian.
I'll defer to my supervisor on that question.
So there's two parts to your question. The first part was about an article that came out last week about, I think you're referring to an article about tickets for basketball and football games that were purchased by the Office of the President. This will give you a glimpse into my life and the media and how this sort of thing works. So the 2016, last year, the Office of the President spent $1.5 million on tickets for men's basketball and football, and used them for a whole variety of reasons. Some of it was for donor activities, some of it was thank yous to people, some of it, who knows, but $1.5 million. So when I started this job in January, I was asked immediately by athletics, how many tickets were we going to buy? And the answer was, well, we're going to buy a lot less than last year. So we looked at it, and it turns out that the current athletic director's employment agreement requires that the Office of the President purchase about $490,000 worth of tickets. That's a requirement in the current contractual language. So as of today, that was the floor. So what do you think we did? We went from 1.5 million, where it was last year, down to as low as we were able to go based on existing contracts. And those tickets all have to be purchased at the beginning of the season, which is why the money was spent all at once. You buy tickets for the season that's coming up. So unfortunately, the story that came out in the paper pointed out the amount that we spent, but it didn't reference the fact that it was 1/3 of the amount the previous year and that it was contractually obligated. And, you know, that's just the problem. You know, you usually get a partial story that comes out. You can bet we're going to lower it below 500,000. I think that's still too much. But to the extent that we do buy some tickets for football and basketball, we bring donors and friends of the university to those games. Our suite is full of friends of the university every single game. And those people write checks and give us a lot more than that $500,000 back. So, you know, it's one of the ways that we do business as it pertains to entertaining donors. You know, your second question is a little hard to ask because, you know, because you're asking us, you know, how we would limit, you know, an individual in some private capacity from writing a book and collecting proceeds from a book. And I'm not quite sure how to answer that other than that, you know, legally we would look at options to protect the university and certainly any intellectual property or any trademark information or things that would have value to the university and not allow that to be, you know, treated in a way that was not advantageous to us.
I might make just one more comment. Part of proper stewardship is the management of resources, and I would also say in many other areas, we are seeking efficiency, we are making cuts, and we're investing in people. And we're not doing things just because we always have. We're looking at our entire model, and we want our investments to be sound for the best return for the University of Louisville and its mission. Thank you for your question. Yes, sir.
Hi, Scott Duncan. I'm Professor of Pediatrics and Neonatal Medicine. This is really a general comment across the board. I'd first like to thank you for your hard work and your integrity, particularly over the last year in very difficult times. I understand that. As a physician in a clinical division, and I have a business degree as well, our division crosses all of those pillars of excellence. We have lost faculty members that have not been replaced. I'm the average age in our division, which is kind of a scary thought because it means more than half of our division is probably age 50 to 55 and above, with 2 members over 65. I have 2 members out because of health issues. I have no reserve. In order to fulfill these pillars, and I can write you a business plan, I can't make it cost neutral, but in order to fulfill these pillars, and what I've heard from several other individuals here, I need resources today in order to ensure the success for tomorrow, more than anything else. I have to be able to mentor junior faculty, and I don't have the junior faculty to be able to mentor currently, to bring up into positions that are there and able to replace faculty when it's time for them to go. So that would be my comment, is if we can start to work our way towards building the structure, improving our resources so that we can look forward to tomorrow.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you have recognized clearly the dilemma we face. You know, we unfortunately are in a situation where for a long, long period of time, this institution has not been an effective steward of its resources. We've raised money, we've generated money, and we've spent it. And if you look at the history of the university over the last 10, 20 years, everything that comes in is spent and then some. There was never a philosophy around saving for a rainy day or stockpiling some money for strategic purposes. There was a focus on growth as rapid as possible in terms of facilities and hiring people and really just stretching the resources to the edge every year. And some years even that wasn't sufficient, and so money was taken from the foundation to cover the difference. And it reached a point where there were simply no further resources to pull from the foundation, and that tipping point resulted in the situation we have today. So I'm not pessimistic about the future, but it's sobering. And you know, the reason that I'm trying to initiate this series of listening tours, and we're going to need to find more and more ways to get additional people involved, is to think about our priorities so we can understand the areas around which we are going to rally to generate the resources we need to do the things that you're worried about. And some of that is going to be through fundraising, some of that is going to be through concentration of existing resources, some of it is going to be through the generation of additional dollars, whether it's new students or new research grants or additional patient populations or all the things that we do, our work products as a university. We have to generate income, and we have to spend it in ways that are carefully selected so we don't continue to deplete what we have. And I wish the situation was different. My job would be a heck of a lot easier if we had a big pot of money, but we don't. And so you know, that makes it challenging. I guess in some ways, you know, I like that kind of a challenge, but boy, there's nothing easy about it.
I've been a long-time employee at U of L. I graduated from undergrad. I got my graduate degree here. And I'm one of those middle staff people. I'm kind of low on the totem pole. There's the administration. And I think that I'd like to speak to 3 different topics. The first was that impacted my job and my stress level at the university was the current spending policy that the foundation put through, and the frustration in trying to reach those individuals and reaching out by email and explaining your situation of whatever. I'm the financial aid director for the School of Medicine. All of our scholarships are funded from our endowment funds. And we have a very unique, and I know all the departments that have endowments, of course. It's different, but I handle lots of endowments. And that is solely how we fund, and we have a 4-year plan. We sort of expected, heard the rumors of going from 5.5 spending to 4.0. Okay, we lost $500,000 a year on that. Then to take something, we've already awarded our awards, made a 4-year plan, and then offered the students these awards. They're guaranteed, they're committed. We have committed them to students. We can't go back on that. And this is how we recruit the best and the diversity for our class for the School of Medicine. However, I emailed and I tried to get to the appropriate person I have emailed every administrator, not one response from anybody in the foundation, not one response from administration. And it was very frustrating. You're going around like the sky's falling because we no longer have carryover. That's how we operated. We had a very specific 4-year plan. And that is a frustration, is that somebody at a staff level, we're never included in any of the real world. We're the ones spending the money. We're the ones that are going to do the work, working with the donors and telling them that their funds are spent appropriately. So I find it very frustrating that, and I'm not hourly. And I think that's another morale thing that has changed since there's been a lot of of staff. I think that it's not the administrators. Administrators get additional pay if they are required to take on a different job responsibility at this university. It's very evident. It happens all the time. Administrators are paid to leave the university and given $1 billion buyout. We see that all the time. Staff, no, you're ripped. And if you happen to be hourly, you're the lucky one because we can't make you stay till 3 in the morning to do a report. But you can make the people that are not hourly, and you have to do it. And I know this probably doesn't, impact a lot of the people in this room because they might be, not in that situation. But I heard that, to get a grant through, it takes those people. It's not just the person that wrote the grant. It takes those people following that grant, making sure it goes to the right person, making sure those appropriate people get hired, paid, and things. So it's not just like once it leaves your desk as an administrator, you can make these plans, increase enrollment. How are we going to, recruit the best and brightest if we don't have money to give them scholarships? That's a frustration. Morale, again, I've been here 30 years, undergrad, and then worked here 30 years. I'm still so passionate about our students. Our students, we don't want them to have this morale issue, and I agree, no one should be, I don't think students have any indication that there's that. But I think there are too many administrators at U of L. That never seems to change. There are too few staff that truly do I'm not saying that there's too many administrators, but the administrators don't communicate with the people that are going to follow out on what we're told to do. I think there is an extreme lack of appropriate space. I know in our office we've asked for years to have a private place when students come in for counseling, and we still don't have that. Favoritism, I think that does happen. There is still discrimination, and there was a study done quite a few years ago, unfortunately too many years ago, about how they looked at U of L, and that was the first time and the only time I ever got an increase in my job level because I was underpaid compared to men in the same position. I think the RIF, it just is unfortunately affecting mostly the non-hourly staff that have to pick up the slack because you can't do overtime, you can't make them stay. So I think there's a frustration not being able to get anyone in administration to actually listen to somebody that is, I mean, I'm at a kind of that medium level. You know, you try and you try and you try to find the right person that can make a decision specific to what you're doing with your endowments or your whatever. And I find that frustrating. They make it across the board, and that happened after we had already awarded them. Our budget, the 5.5 to 4%, that all happened. We knew it in April. We didn't know this till September 1 that we could not have carryover, and I'm sure a lot of departments, you all may be scrambling to find out what you're going to do if you were planning to purchase something big in the future or whatever. It affects us all differently because we have different things we spend our money on. But just to assume that we can all accommodate that kind of cut, and I work with donors and things, and it's frustrating because I just, you know, if I knew I was only getting 4% to students and I can't even run my scholarship program the way we need it to run for recruitment purposes, it's frustrating. So the frustration is there, I think, with staff.
Well,
go ahead, Brian.
Well, and Leslie, I've sat through many meetings with you, and I will say, I know this is, it's not only your work, but it's your passion, and it's visceral for you. And support of these students is what you do, and I really appreciate your comments, and I understand your concern and your passion, and I respect it. I will tell you this, I really believe, again, over time, we've asked for money, we've campaigned for money, we've made investments so we can hire people to ask for more money. But we're at a stage where we really need to focus on stewardship, and I think this Office of Stewardship is an interface. It's an opportunity for you to connect with someone, with a dedicated person, particularly at an enterprise such as medicine, which is a very, very large enterprise. And I think you're going to see a considerable difference. Endowment compliance, making certain that we're spending it correctly, and then understanding where the gaps are is a part of that process. I really believe you'll see a significant improvement in this regard.
I guess one of the things that struck me when you were speaking is the frustration and the morale of staff or what we used to call professional administrative staff, and that your effort to be heard not being heard. And so as we strive to be, to have a culture of excellence where everyone feels valued and included, we need to hear the voices because we need to know where the problems are so that when we're talking, we're not talking in platitudes and rhetoric. We're really making changes in the way we operate so that your voice would be as important as anyone else in terms of hearing and listening and our being able to address the concerns that you've articulated. So I just want to say thank you.
Well, and I can understand that, but not everybody does not utilize their endowment. Not every, maybe departments, some departments, but you're penalized if you do have, we have worked years to get this to a plan that we could, have a consistent amount of funding each year. We knew how much we had to carry over. I know exactly which students are going to get those. And I work with hundreds of students and almost 100 accounts. So it is different, we know, but we are never given the chance to talk to anybody within the foundation and explain. This is going to decimate our recruitment efforts. I know we can spend, we will spend it on the students we've committed, but we have $0 to award new students for the incoming class. It is just not a practical or reality-based situation. Every department there should be some exceptions. There just has to be, because you will decimate the recruitment program.
Well, you'll be perhaps glad to know that I'm as bad as you are, and I'm trying to work hard to fix a lot of the things on the list of issues you brought up. And having meetings like this is one step in that process, so we make sure we know what all those issues are. This is not a foundation meeting, but we certainly can get your concerns to people who represent the administrative group at the foundation, and I'll be glad to do that so that someone does answer. I'm sorry on their behalf that no one there has responded to your emails. The foundation faced a bad set of facts. Their money had all been spent, other than what was in restricted accounts. And so they made some draconian changes, as you've pointed out, which nobody liked. And it impacted programs negatively. And it's sad, and it was the reality of the changes they had to make to prevent the situation from getting worse still. A couple of just real quick answers to things. You mentioned that there were lots and lots of RIFs at the university. I want to make sure people realize that is not true. Since January of this year, I think there have been only about 80 RIFs total, and of those, 3/4 or more of them were in areas where there were labs that had lost their funding. And so some individuals were not continued in labs where the funding was gone. There have been very, very few RIFs. There's been attrition, no question, and people have suffered from that. But that's a voluntary departure as opposed to a RIF. So I think that's an important distinction. And as for buyouts, I have not arranged for a buyout of one person since I've been here. There have been a few people who left who had things promised to them in previous employment contracts when they left. Obviously, we don't have any control over those. I think we're just about to the end of the list on those. I have not created any new such obligations or paid anybody to leave. So I just want to make sure you understand that as well. So, I'm frustrated as well. As I said earlier, it's not easy having to start from a position where you're behind the 8 ball and keep all these programs going. But rather than, relive it, I'm trying to create an environment where we can get good ideas to get past it. We can do it. All businesses go through cycles where there are good times and bad times, and businesses have to redesign themselves so that they can, move into the future and be more successful. And we are at such a junction, like it or not, and that's what we're doing. Well, you've been kind to spend an hour and a half with us right in the middle of the day. We will find other times, other locations, maybe better times. I know there aren't very many of our clinical colleagues here today since it's right in the middle of the day, so we'll do our best to accommodate people's schedules and keep the ideas coming. Thank you.
We're a team, buddy. We're a team. Kevin?